Have you ever noticed how the room feels different when the quietest person walks in? Not empty, just heavier. Conversations keep flowing, laughter stays loud, but something shifts beneath the surface. Because while everyone else is busy being seen, someone is busy seeing everything. In psychology, silence is rarely accidental. It's often a signal that a mind is observing, calculating, and storing information rather than spending it. And here's the unsettling part: the people who speak the least are usually the ones who understand the most. You can argue with a loud voice. You can predict a talkative one. But the silent presence? You never really know what they've concluded about you, and that uncertainty is exactly where their power begins. Silence is often misinterpreted as absence of confidence, of intelligence, of engagement. But in psychological observation, silence frequently indicates the opposite. The quietest person in the room is rarely disconnected. More often, they are intensely present. When an individual is not focused on speaking, performing, or asserting themselves, their cognitive energy is redirected toward observation. They are watching how people enter the room, who interrupts whom, which jokes land and which fall flat, where voices tighten, and where they soften. These details may seem insignificant to most, but to an observant mind, they form a psychological map of the environment. From a clinical standpoint, this heightened observation reflects advanced cognitive processing. The brain is constantly filtering stimuli, and speech itself consumes a significant amount of mental bandwidth. When that bandwidth is freed, perception sharpens. Quiet individuals often notice inconsistencies between what people say and how they behave, micro-expressions, shifts in posture, fleeting facial tension, or subtle changes in tone. These signals are largely unconscious, yet they reveal emotional states more accurately than words. Someone who speaks less has more capacity to register these cues and integrate them into a coherent understanding of others. Silence can also indicate strong emotional regulation. Many people speak to manage anxiety, feel discomfort, or assert control over uncertainty. The quiet individual does not require constant verbal reassurance to feel secure. This suggests a nervous system that is relatively well regulated, capable of tolerating ambiguity and social tension without immediate discharge. In psychological terms, this is a form of internal stability. When emotions are processed internally rather than externalized impulsively, reactions become measured and intentional. Another critical factor is delayed judgment. Loud environments reward immediate responses, opinions formed in seconds, and emotions expressed in real time. The quiet observer operates differently. They allow patterns to emerge before forming conclusions. They listen longer, not because they have nothing to say, but because they are collecting enough information to say something accurate. This patience often leads to insights that others miss, connections between behavior and motivation, power dynamics unfolding beneath casual conversation, unspoken alliances forming quietly in the background. Importantly, this kind of silence is not passive. It is active restraint. The individual is choosing not to reveal their internal processing. This creates psychological asymmetry. Others become readable, while the quiet person remains opaque. Humans are deeply unsettled by what they cannot interpret. We feel safer when we believe we understand others' intentions. The quiet observer disrupts this sense of predictability, not by doing anything overt, but by withholding access to their inner world. In this way, silence becomes a form of psychological leverage. It allows a person to remain grounded while others expose their motives, insecurities, and strategies through constant speech. The quietest person is not behind the conversation, they are above it, watching the structure form. And by the time they choose to engage, they are no longer reacting. They are responding from a position of clarity, having already seen the full picture while others were still busy filling the air with noise. When a person speaks very little, every action they take carries weight. In psychology, this is a fundamental principle: reduced expression increases perceived intentionality. The mind naturally assumes that scarcity signals value. When words are rare, they are assumed to be deliberate. When reactions are delayed, they are perceived as calculated. This is why the quietest person in the room often feels unpredictable, not because they are chaotic, but because their inner processes are concealed. And what cannot be seen cannot be easily anticipated. Most people act reactively. They speak as they think, decide as they feel, and reveal intentions before they fully understand them. The quiet individual operates in reverse. Thought precedes expression. Emotion is processed before action. This creates a gap between stimulus and response, a space where judgment, self-control, and strategy develop. In clinical psychology, this gap is associated with higher executive functioning. It allows a person to override impulse, resist emotional contagion, and choose behavior based on long-term outcomes rather than short-term relief. Because of this restraint, their actions tend to be precise. They do not move often, but when they do, the movement matters. When they agree, it is not casual. When they disagree, it is not emotional. And when they withdraw, it is rarely temporary. This makes their behavior difficult to reverse and therefore psychologically powerful. Humans fear what they cannot influence. The quiet person does not offer many opportunities for manipulation because they reveal little and commit slowly. There is also a strong connection between silence and self-governance. Individuals who do not rely on constant expression tend to be internally anchored. Their identity is not negotiated aloud with others. They do not need immediate feedback to confirm who they are or what they believe. This internal orientation gives them consistency. While others shift opinions to match the room, the quiet person remains stable. Stability, especially in unpredictable environments, is perceived as strength. Another overlooked aspect is emotional compression. When emotions are not discharged verbally, they are contained. This does not mean they disappear. It means they are stored, analyzed, and eventually resolved internally. As a result, when the quiet person finally reacts, it can seem sudden or intense to outsiders. In reality, the reaction is not impulsive, it is the final stage of a long internal process. This is why their decisions often feel definitive. They have already exhausted the debate within themselves. This level of intentionality creates psychological tension in others. People are used to reading cues, tone, verbosity, emotional leakage, to adjust their behavior. The quiet individual offers few such signals. This forces others into a guessing game, which increases anxiety and self-consciousness. In group dynamics, this often leads to the quiet person being watched more closely than the loudest one. Ultimately, the power of the quietest person lies in this: they do not act to be seen. They act because they have decided. And once a decision is made, it is rarely announced, it is simply carried out. In a world driven by noise and reaction, this kind of controlled, intentional behavior stands out as both unsettling and formidable. So if there is one thing to understand, it is this: silence is not weakness, it is containment. The quietest person in the room is not waiting to be heard, they are waiting to be certain. While others reveal themselves through constant noise, this individual preserves their inner world, studies the environment, and moves only when the outcome is already clear. That is why their presence feels heavy, why their words linger longer, and why their decisions seem final. Fear does not arise from aggression or volume, it arises from control. Control over emotion. Control over reaction. Control over timing. In psychology, the most powerful minds are rarely the loudest ones. They are the ones who do not need to announce themselves, because when they finally act, the room adjusts around them. And by then, it is already too late to misunderstand who held the real power all along.